If you've ever picked up a set of knitting needles and done the stockinette stitch, you are very familiar with the infamous stockinette curl. Now, if you're getting frustrated by that, let me be the first to tell you that it happens to us all. You've done nothing wrong. But there is a way that you can go from a curled stockinette to a flatter piece of work by adding a border. So today what we're going to go over in part one of the border series is the garter stitch border. Now this is a lovely border that you can do so that your stockinette stitch comes out flatter. So grab your needles, come on back, and we'll get to learn how to do the garter stitch border. So the goal in creating your border is to establish some type of balance, because when you have the knit side of your stockinette and the purl side of your stockinette, it contracts the stitches. So what the border does is relax that contraction. So what you see here is I did 2 rows of the garter stitch on top and bottom, and then I did 3 stitches on the side. So if you have a larger width, then you're going to have obviously more on the 2 side panels and then more on the top panels and the bottom panels, so that you create that balance so that it just fans out and lies flat. If you have a smaller stockinette in the middle, then you're going to want to have a smaller side borders and smaller top borders so that you can have that blossom out and lie flat. So just to give you a little idea of the concept of what we're doing when we're creating a border, we're just relaxing the contracted stitches in the stockinette stitch. So with that being said, I've casted on my needle 20 stitches. You do however many that you want to practice with, but for the sake of time, I've just did 20. So what we're going to do for this bottom area, and I'll show you again. For the bottom area, we're just going to practice doing 6 rows of garter stitch. So that's just knit on one side, turn your work, and knit on the other side. So it's a 1 row repeat. So you're going to do that garter stitch for 6 rows. Do that, come back, and then we'll work on how we're going to do the side border for the garter stitch. Okay, so you've done your 6 rows of garter stitch, and this is how you're going to look on your wrong side. That's where you should have stopped. And this is how you should look on the right side. So garter stitch is reversible, okay? So let's go back to our wrong side of the work, okay? So one thing I wanted to point out is that it works best if you do the rows in even pairs. So 6 rows, 4 rows, 2 rows. So because garter stitch is done in pairs in rows, if that makes sense. So if you do an odd number, then it's not going to work as a garter stitch. So just something to note. All right. So now that we're on the wrong side of the work, this is something just to pay close attention to, okay? So now let's get our stitch markers. Let's get our 2 stitch markers here, okay? Because stitch markers are going to be your friend in this. So on the wrong side of stockinette stitch, that's your purl side. So we're going to do, our border is going to be 4 stitches in on each side, okay? So we're going to knit 4 stitches, place a stitch marker, purl all the way to our last 4, and then knit those stitches. All right, so let me show you how I usually set mine up. Okay, now you don't have to use the stitch markers. If you can remember that, that's great, but I think that when you're first learning how to do this, let the stitch markers be your guide. Okay, so again, we're going to knit the first 4, place our stitch marker. Again, try to use closed stitch markers. It's going to work better for you, but unfortunately these are all I have for the moment. So place your stitch marker. Okay, bring the yarn to the front because you're on the wrong side of, now we're doing our stockinette pattern now. So wrong side is your purl side. So we're going to purl up to the last 4 stitches. Okay, almost at that last 4. Okay, so now we're at the last 4. So we're going to place our next stitch marker. I'm going to close that up, place that marker, bring the yarn to the front because now we're going to knit our last 4 because again, we're creating symmetry here. So whatever you do on one end, you have to do on the other end. Okay. All right. So that is your setup. So that way you can't get lost because you have your 2 stitch markers there as your guide. So stitch markers are going to be your friend, whether you do knit or crochet. So it's going to be very beneficial. Buy a lot of them. Okay. So let's turn our work. Now we're on the right side of the work. Okay. So on the right side, stockinette is knit. So this is going to be your easy side because all you have to do is just knit all your stitches on this side. So knit the 4 for your side border. Okay. Scooch down if you have to. Move your stitch marker. And see how I'm juggling these around, so that's why it's better to have the smaller ones. But at any rate, you're going to knit your stockinette panel here. Okay, so I'm at my stitch marker, so that gives me signal that I need to slip that onto the right hand needle. Okay, and this is my side border, so all I have to do is knit those last 4. Okay, so that's how you do your right side, and you're starting to see the stockinette peek through here. So it's very simple once you get the hang of it. Okay, so let's turn our work to our wrong side, and we'll do one more wrong side. So with garter stitch, it's always knit all your stitches. So you're going to follow along here. You're going to knit your first 4. Okay. Here's your signal here that you need to do something different. So you're going to slip your marker, bring your yarn to the front because you're on the wrong side of the stockinette, and that's always your purl side. So let's purl all our stitches. Okay. Now we're at our stitch marker. That's our red light that signals us that we need to stop and do something else. So we're going to bring our yarn to the back, slip our stitch marker, and now let's do our last garter 4 stitches here for our side border. All right, so we have completed our right side. So practice that. Right side, wrong side. Practice that. Go up. I'm going to do, let's say, 6 more repeats of that. So after you do your 6, so we're on the same page, we'll do the top half of the border. All right, so we're at the home stretch, but before we get to the top border, let's take a peek at what we got. So we have a nice fabric. Now, if you were knitting the stockinette without the border, at this point, you would just have a curled piece of fabric, which again is not wrong, but now that you've added this border, you have a nice piece of work that you can look at and visualize where you are, and you don't have that curling. So before we get into the top border, if I could ask you to, if you find this video helpful to you, if you would consider hitting that like button, that gets this out to more people so they can learn the technique as well. And if you want to learn more borders, because this is part 1 of a series, we're going to learn a lot of borders, consider subscribing so you'll be in the know, so you'll know when the next tutorial comes up. So with that being said, we are going to, what we do on the bottom, we definitely have to do at the top. So if you remember, on the bottom, we did 6 rows of garter stitch. So we have to match the bottom to the top. So let's do our 6 rows of garter stitch on the top, and then we'll bind off and weave in our ends. Oh, sorry. And also, let me get you started on that so you can see what we're doing. So at this point, you can remove the stitch markers because it's going to be knit all your stitches, so there's no changes. But or you can leave them, it's totally up to you, but I usually just take mine out. So just to get you started, we are on the right side of our work. So I'm just going to knit along. Okay, we can just let that drop off because we don't need it anymore, and then continue to knit. So keep doing that for 6 rows, and I'll see you back just to finish off. Okay, so we're at our last stitch, so I'm going to bind that last one off. Okay. Okay, that part's done, and you have a nice flat piece of work. Wonderful, wonderful. Now I'm going to cut, make sure you have at least 6 inches so you have enough yarn to weave in your end. So I always overdo it, then under. Okay, now there's many ways to do your end knot. This is the way that I do mine. May not be the common way, but this is the way that I do mine. I just pull up a little bit, and I either use a crochet hook, or I don't even need a hook. I can just go in here like this and then pinch down. Okay, and there you have it. You are done, 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 done. So let's weave on our ends, but let's just chat a little bit about one thing. So you see how this lays nice and flat? Of course, when you block it, it's even going to be even flatter and a better finish. But if you find that you still have the roll, then maybe you need to tinker around a little bit, and it's just not enough weight on either end. So this is why it's good to kind of do little swatches like this, so that you're not committed to a whole project and then you see at the end that things haven't worked out. So this lays pretty flat to me, so I think we're good to go. But if you still get something curled up like that, then there's just not enough weight on either end, so you need to do more on the top and more on the sides. So just something to take into consideration. So this is going to be our front side, so we can flip over to the wrong side. And just a review on how to do your weave in your ends. Right over the needle, pinch and slide off, and then wiggle right into the needle of the eye of the needle, I should say. Okay. And then I'm just going to pick up here and then find a good spot to weave in. Just going to go underneath here. And pull. Don't pull too hard. You don't want to stretch out the stitches, or contract them, I should say. And then go back down. Okay. And just do a quick check on the side. It's perfect. And then you may want to go back up just for good measure. Go back up again. Again, make sure you're not compromising any of the stitches. Check your front side. Still looks good to me, and I'm okay with that. So then I'm going to cut as close as possible, and we're good to go. So I always like to double check. I like how that looks. And then you just do the same for this piece of yarn here, and you are done. So that's how you do your garter stitch border. So like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next tutorial. Happy knitting!